Hi and welcome to another one of my videos. This one is for Set 6 Paper 3F from Edexcel, and if you're working at Mountbatten or in one of my groups, then we'll be calling this booklet number 21. This one is a little bit different from the other videos I've made because there won't be any answers in it. This is a help video that I'm experimenting with. I will make answer videos for you later on to go with the answer booklet, but for the time being, to give you some help, I want to give you a help video. And rather than just give you the answers, I'm concerned one or two of you are just copying them. I want you to think about it. So I've put down in this video the kind of help that I might give you if you ask me the same question in class. As I go on for each question, I go into more detail and give you more and more help. And I'd rather you basically use as little help as possible. So once you think you've got the idea of what you need to do, it'd be a good idea to just stop the video or move on, rather than listening to it all the way through. But that said, I'm making this video to help you, and if you need the help, then please use it. I'd rather you use the video rather than sat there sweating and not being able to do the questions and getting a bit dispirited. Okay, well, let's move on to the questions and have a look. Hopefully, as we look through the first lot of questions, you'll be able to do these fairly quickly and with the minimum of help, but I'll just talk about them nonetheless. We've got a cafe here, and we want to know how many cups of coffee at £1.40 she can buy with £10. Well, you know what you're going to do with those two numbers. You've just got to decide when it gets to a decimal number whether you're going to round the number up or round the number down, depending on what you think is most sensible. In question 2, we have two number machines. We can see 10 going into both of them, and number machine A adds 7 to the number and then subtracts 4, and number machine B divides the number by 2, and then whatever comes out has 7 added on. And you can see that 10 is going into both of these machines, and we've got to say which one has the highest output. So it's just a simple matter of showing some working out, putting 10 in, adding 7 to it, taking 4, write down what comes out, putting 10 in, dividing by 2, adding 7, and then writing down what comes out, and then make sure you say which number machine gives the greater output. And then down here we've got a different number machine. We can see 4 going into it. It gets multiplied by 2. I'm sure you can work out what comes out. And whatever that number is, gets made into 14 by this machine. So you've simply got to write down what this machine must do here to make the number that comes out after multiplying by 2 into 14. Number 3, you've got a list of numbers. You've got to write down the factor of 24, a multiple of 7, and a square number. Make sure you don't get a factor and multiple mixed up. That's a common mistake. If I was looking at factors of 30, I'd look at all the numbers that multiply to make 30. So you've got 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, and 5 times 6. That's your lot. And those numbers I just mentioned are the factors of 30. And you've got to do the same thing for 24, just spotting a number that divides equally into 24. Multiple of 7. Well, if I ask for about a multiple of 9, that would be 9, 18, 27, 36, and so on. So I'm sure from that you can work out what a multiple of 7 is. Don't get these two things mixed up. That's a common mistake. A square number is the answer you get when you square a number. And when you square a number, you multiply it by itself. So 10 squared is 100. So 100 is a square number. 10 times 10 makes it. 144 is a square number, because if you square 12, you make 144. Breakfast cereal is put into packets, and 1 kilogram of the cereal is used to fill 20 packets. Work out the number of grams. Well, that's pretty easy. In each packet, you've got 20 packets making a kilogram, and it says grams, so the first step would be to turn that into grams, and then work out how many grams 1 packet would be if 20 of them make a kilogram. And then down here we've got the weights of ingredients needed to make 100 kilograms of the cereal, and then work out the weight of oats needed to fill 5,000 packets of the cereal. So if I'm looking at this question, first of all, I think that this thing might be connected to this, but there's two bits to it really. Well, we've got to find out some weight here. Well, what's this going to weigh? Well, we know that 20 packets weigh 1 kilogram. So every 20 packets weighs a kilogram, and you've got 5,000. So the first thing to do is use this information and this to work out how much 5,000 packets of the cereal would weigh. And once you know what that is, you can use this to help you answer how many oats you would need. So for example, if this weighed 300 kilograms, it doesn't, but say it did, weighed 300 kilograms, then the amount of oats you would need would be 3 lots of 28, okay, which is 84. Yeah, 84. Okay, now you've got to do something similar to that. It's not 300, but it's something similar. Okay, so use this information. 20 packets weighs a kilogram to work out how much 5,000 packets would weigh, and then use this list to work out how much oats you need. Question 5, you've got a scatter graph showing some information about 8 sheep, and they've plotted some information. To each one of these crosses is a sheep, and this is how tall it is, and this is how long it is. And obviously you can see here there's quite a strong connection between how tall the sheep is and how long the sheep is. And you've got to plot this information on here. You've got to check and make sure that you get the squares right, because if we go here to here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares, which takes us from 65 to 70. So each small square, you can work out what each small square is. I won't tell you. Here you've got 5 squares, but it takes you from 70 to 80. So it's a different kind of scale, and you've got to work out what each one of these squares is here. And then use a simple matter of plotting this information, and make sure that you get the height and the length the right way round. Obviously, if you get a cross that doesn't really follow this pattern of dots, it's a big tip to you that you haven't done it right. You've probably got the numbers mixed up and round the wrong way. Then it says describe the relationship between height and length. So that means you've got to describe what's called the correlation. And that means the connection or a relationship between height and length, and you have to decide whether it's positive or whether it's negative or whether there's no correlation. And then on this last part we have to estimate the length of the sheep if we know that it's 76 centimeters tall. And I recommend that you draw a line of best fit with a ruler that goes roughly through this, and then use that line to work out from 76 up to the line and across an estimate of what the length of the sheep might be. Question 6 looks a bit complicated, but actually it's really simple. When you know the length of an adult's foot, I, in inches, you can use the formula. So it basically means multiply it by 3 and subtract 25, and that answer is your shoe size. Then, when you know the UK shoe size, which is what you've just done here, you simply add 33 to it, and it gives you the European shoe size. And we need to know whether Jane, with a foot length of 11 inches, will fit into a pair of shoes where the European size is 38. So you simply need to put in 11 in here, remembering that 3i means 3 times I. Put it into this formula. Whatever answer you get, put it into this formula, and that will tell you your European size. And then you compare the size you've just worked out with the size of the shoes, and remember to say whether it will or whether it won't fit. Question 7. There are 165 counters in a bag. Each counter is either black or white, and there are twice as many black counters as white counters in the bag. And then she takes 40% of the black counters from the bag and work out the ratio of the number of black counters to the number of white counters now in the bag. So the first thing you need to do is work out how many black and white counters there are before she takes any away. Well, you know that the ratio for black to white is 2 to 1. That's what this line here is saying. And you know there's 165. So basically we've got to split 165 into 3 equal pieces. 2 will be black and 1 will be white. And once we do that, that will tell us how much each part will be. And then multiplying that by 2 will tell me how many black there are. Okay, and also 1 share will be white. Alright, so that's how you're going to find out how many black and white there are. Then you're going to find 40% of the black counters and take those away. So to find 40%, multiply by 0.4, it's a calculator paper. And then removing that number from the number of black counters you've calculated here will tell you how many you've got left. And that will then give you a number of black counters and a number of white counters, and that's your ratio, and then you need to simplify that to get the last mark. Okay, remember that the name of a shape is to do with the number of sides it has. Okay, So this might not look like a regular shape, it's not, and neither is this, but it doesn't matter, it's a number of sides. Okay, so remember, you should know the names of the polygons: hexagon, octagon, heptagon, decagon, nonagon, pentagon, quadrilateral, and so on. You should know those. Here's a circle. A circle's got a radius of 4 centimeters right down the length of the diameter. So you must know what a diameter is. If you don't, Google it, look at it on Corbett Maths, look in your revision guide. It's easy. And you need to, while we're at it, know other names of shapes or parts of the circle. We've got to draw a tangent to the circle. Once again, just Google it, type in tangent of a circle, and you'll see what it is. And you need to know things like sector and chord and segment, and don't get sector and segment mixed up. But these are just simple things that are easy to remember, easy to know, easy to find out, and you just get more marks just for knowing them and less marks for not knowing them. So it makes sense to actually learn what those things are. Okay, we're down to question 10. Noah got 8 out of 20 in a test. Write 8 out of 20 as a percentage. So whenever you see 8 out of, that out of immediately tells you there's a fraction. 8 out of, there's the line, horizontal line, 8 out of 20. That's your fraction. And then you've got to turn that fraction that currently has 20 as a denominator into one that has 100 on the bottom, or as a denominator. So whatever way you want to do that, but I think I would divide top and bottom by 2. I'd half but top and bottom. That would give me something out of 10, and then that's easy to make that into something out of 100. And remember, once it's out of 100, that's what it is as a percentage. For example, 83 out of 100 is 83%. Okay, that's exactly what a percentage means, something out of 100. Okay, so you need to make that fraction into one with 100 as the denominator. Here's a solid cube. Find the surface area of the cube. Now the surface area is literally what it says, the area of the surface. And this cube is made up of 6 faces. Think of a dice. And they're all the same. And they're all squares. And you know how to find the area of a square. That's 3 and that's 3. So you can find the area of one face. And you know how many faces it will have. So using that information, you can work out the area of the whole surface. Then we've got some prisms that are formed of layers of cubes, and we've got to compare the volume of these two shapes. So for each one, it's the area of the face you can see. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 9 cubes in a layer, and you can see here how many layers of 9 there will be. Okay, and that will tell you the volume or the number of cubes, same thing. And here, once again, I'm not going to count them for you here. I've done it once already here, so you can count how many cubes there are in a layer, in that face you can see, and this dimension here tells you how many layers there will be, and once again you can use that information to work out the volume of prism B. And then you just got to say, when it says compare, it just means you've got to literally do that, compare it, make a statement about how big this is compared to this. So you will either write prism A has got a bigger volume than B, or a smaller volume than B, or maybe you might even say it's got the same volume. Okay, whatever your answers say, write down what it tells you. Question 12, here is a 4-sided spinner, and the spinner is biased. So once again, you need to know what biased means. If you think about a biased referee in a football match, he or she would favour one team over the other. And with a spinner, it means the same thing. It means that some numbers are more favoured than others. They're going to come up more often. And you can see that because if it was a fair spinner with 4 numbers, each number would have a 1 in 4, a quarter chance of coming up. So the probability that a spinner will land on 1 and 2, or 2, is 0.2 and 0.1. And the probability that the spinner will land on 2, beg your pardon, is the same as the probability it will land on 4. Okay, I think I got a bit garbled there, so let's try that again. These are the probabilities it's going to land on 1 and 3, and these two probabilities are the same. Well, what you do know is that the probability of all 4 is going to add up to make 1, because there's nothing else on this spinner that can happen. So you've covered all the things that can happen here. So you know that this and this is going to be the same, and together they must add to these two to make a total of 1. So you can work out what 2 and 4 will be. And then we've got to work out an estimate for the number of times the spinner will land on 3. And you can see the chance is 0.1. Now that 0.1 is telling you how often, on average, it's going to happen. So for example, if it was 0.5, it's going to happen every 0.5 times, half the time. So if you spun it 200 times, it would happen half of that, 100. Okay, or if it happened to be 0.25, that's a quarter. So it will happen a quarter of the time. That's what the probability means. So if you did it 200 times, you'd expect to see this happening a quarter of the time, which is 50 times. So you've got to use this probability, 0.1, and this in a calculation to work out your estimate, okay, of how many times you think it's going to land on a 3. Here's a shape. The total area is 1,640 square meters, and 30% of it is blue, and 1/10 of it is yellow, and 550 square meters is grey. So first of all, 30% of this amount of money, I beg your pardon, area, is going to be blue. And to find 30%, just multiply by 0.3. 1/10 of this area is yellow, so you know how to work out a tenth of something, cut it into 10 pieces. And then this one, there's no work to be done because they've told you that this area is 550 square meters. So once you've worked out the area of that and that, you can put it with that, take it away from the whole shape, and what's left is going to be the area that is white. And then if it's more than 400, you'll say, yes it is. And if it's less than 400, you'll say, no it's not. Pretty simple. Question 14 is one of those questions where you can do it several different ways. Okay, whichever way you do it, if you do it right, you'll get the same answer. So it doesn't really matter. We've got 3 angles here at a point, and so together they make 360. So you could write 6x minus 21 added to 4x plus 31 added to 90 equals 360. Tidy it up, solve the equation, it will tell you what x is. Or you could say that together these 2 angles must make 270 if that is 90. So we can forget about that and just say 6x minus 21 added to 4x add 31 must equal 270. And lastly, probably the most simple way, is they tell you that these 2 angles are the same. So you could simply just write 6x minus 21 equals 4x add 31 and then solve that equation. So there's 3 different ways of doing it. They'll get the same answer, and I would just choose the way that gives you the best chance of solving the equation. Any way you do it, you'll get the same answer. Okay, so we've got Caroline and Mark in a darts team, and we've got how much they've won and how much they've lost. And we've got to be careful because here they give you an angle for the amount that's lost, and here they give you an angle for the amount that's won. So we must make sure that we don't trip up here. Caroline played 52 games, Mark played 150 games. So this pie chart for Caroline represents 52 games. And we can see that she's lost a certain proportion. So this amount here, this angle here, should tell you the fraction of the games that she has lost. And therefore you'll be able to work out how many she's won. In the same way, you've got an angle here. Now think about what fraction of 360 that angle is. And whatever fraction of the circle it is, that's the fraction of the games. Alright? Just in the same way as whatever fraction of the circle this slice is, that's the fraction of the games she lost. Okay, so use this angle to tell you the fraction of the circle that this slice represents, which is also going to be the fraction of 150 that Mark won. So doing that will tell you how many games Caroline won, how many games Mark won, find the difference and say how much more the difference is. Anna's making crumble. She makes the crumble from flour, sugar and butter, and she needs twice as much butter as sugar, and she needs 1.5 times as much flour as butter. And she's going to make 900 grams of crumble. So probably the easiest way to do it is to say, okay, right, well, whatever the sugar is, she needs twice as much of it in butter and 1.5 times as much as that for flour. So if we said that that is X, then this will be 2x. Whatever that is, this is going to be twice as much, so it will be 2x. And the flour is going to be 1.5 times as much of that. So 1.5 lots of 2 is 3. So if that is x, that is 2x, and that is 3x. And those are the weights you need. Now you know the sugar and the butter and the flour together make 900. So in that case, the x and the 2x and the 3x added together must make 900. Now you can tidy that up, solve that equation, and that will tell you what x is. And then you can answer the question. 17. Toby invested 4,500 for 2 years in a savings account, and he was paid 4% per annum compound interest, which means that the money grows from 1 year to the next. So if it was 3%, or let's say 7%, that means this is growing by 7% every year, which means you multiply it by 1.07, because the 0.07 is your percentage and the 1 is the amount you've already got. So multiplying by 1.07 increases something by 7%. You want to increase this by 4%, so I'll let you think about what you're going to multiply it by. Now whatever that is, you need to multiply it for every one of these 2 years. Okay? So every time, every year, this is going to grow by 4%. So it grows by 4% in 1 year and then gets multiplied again for the second year. Okay? Now, we've got a triangle and we've got some parallel lines here. So immediately, whenever I see parallel lines, I'm thinking of looking for F's corresponding angles or Z's alternate angles. Okay? Now, if I can't work out how to work out an angle, what I would do is start working out any angles I can work out. Okay, and also what I would do is whenever I work out an angle, I write it or draw it into the diagram. Okay, because by doing that, it helps me see what information I've got and how to work out the stuff that is still missing. Okay, well, I've got an angle here and I can use this angle to work it out. Okay, what have I got here? Exactly. Okay, once I've got that angle, I can use that and that to work out that angle. How? Look. Okay, once I've got that angle, I can work that angle out. How do I know? Look at this F. Right, there's an F here. Okay, in so many of these questions, there's lots of different ways of doing it. Okay, so you might have a different way of doing it. Okay, so here is an angle, and here is a F here, this way. Okay, so there's lots of different ways of doing it, but what is really important is when it says give reasons for your answer. Okay, so if you work out an angle because it's 180 degrees on a straight line, write that down, 180 degrees on a straight line. Just write it down. If you don't, you're throwing away marks. Okay, if you know how to work out the angle, you know the reason. You have a reason. You didn't just guess what the answer was. Write down the reason and get more marks. Okay, then we've got a situation where she drives this distance at 50 miles an hour and this distance at 60 miles an hour. And we've got to work out the difference in time. So it's fairly straightforward. Write down your formula triangle and you know that time will be distance divided by speed. So you've got the same distance and you've got this as a speed and this is a speed. The problem might be for you is when you work it out, you get a weird kind of decimal number, okay, because it will be a fraction of an hour. Okay, you might get 0.7 or something like that. Okay, and the answer is supposed to be in minutes. Okay, this is simply solved, easy, because it's not just whole numbers that you multiply by 60. Any number that is written in hours, you change it into minutes by multiplying by 60. So for example, just like 2 hours is 2 times 60, 120 minutes, 0.7 hours, for example, would be 0.7 times 60, 42 minutes. Okay, and don't forget you can use a calculator. So do your calculations, change them into minutes by multiplying by 60, and then see the difference in the times that you've got and write it down. Question 20 is a simultaneous equation. It's not a particularly nice one, but in all these ones, what we try to do is make either the amount of x the same or the amount of y the same. And what I think I would do here is I would multiply this by 2, and this by 2, and this by 2. Okay, so the simultaneous equation still works. This equation, this fact would still be true. Okay, but the point of doing that is then I've got 2x here and 2x here. And then I would take this equation away from my new equation. Okay, and the reason I do that is because by making these two x's, or these two things here, both the same, in this case 2x, when I take that away from that, it would get rid of the x's, leaving me just y's, and that would help me find out what y is. And then once I've found out y, I can work out what x is. Just a little tip to you: when you do this, you'll be doing minus 2y, actually be minus 4y, because you have doubled it, minus 4y, take away minus y. So remember what happens when you take away a minus. Yeah, it's a plus. Okay, just be careful with that. You'll find out that y is a negative number. If you get that, don't worry, you've probably got it right. Okay. Okay, the rectangle has been divided into two strips, A and B. The strips have the same width. 2/5 of strip A is shaded, and 5/8 of strip B is shaded. Well, you've got to work out how much isn't shaded. So you can either, if you look at this strip here, it's strip A, and 2/5 is shaded. So you can either work out what is shaded, and then take it away from 40, or you can say if 2/5 is shaded, then 3/5 isn't shaded, and do it that way. Whatever way you do it, to find 2/5 of something, remember you divide by 5 to find 1/5, and then multiply by 2. Okay, so then from here you'll have an amount that isn't shaded, and from here you'll have an amount that isn't shaded. So what do you think you need to do next? You need to add them together, and that will tell you the total amount that is not shaded. And that's the total amount out of 80, because this was 40 and this was 40. So whatever amount you've got that isn't shaded, write it as a fraction out of 80. And there is your fraction. I don't know if it will simplify. If it can, then do it, but otherwise just leave it as it is. Okay, whoops. Make W the subject of the formula. P equals W minus 3 divided by 2. Now at the moment P is the subject of the formula. We know that because it's the letter that's all on its own. It's not necessarily the thing that's on the left, although it normally is, could be on the right, but the letter is all on its own. It's a formula that tells us what P is when we know what W is. And we need to rearrange it so that we get W being the subject of the formula. So if you read that to yourself, it says P equals W minus 3 divided by 2. And that kind of gives you an idea about what you need to do. The last thing you said was divided by 2. So that's what you need to undo. And this 2 will then come over to here and become a multiplied by 2. Then you need to get rid of this subtract 3. It will come over to here and become a plus 3. Okay, and that will then mean you've moved these numbers and their operations over to the other side, leaving you just with a W, and that will be the answer. Right, question 23. You've got rules of indices. We've got an N, an N, and an N. So the important thing is that they're all the same letter. So they're representing the same number, which means we can apply the rules of indices, which means that when we multiply, we add the powers, and when we divide, we subtract them. So work out what that is, first of all, and then work out what that answer is divided by that. When you factorize this, you're basically looking for factors or things that these two parts share. Okay, the only thing you can see here that they share is 5, the 5y and the 15. Okay, so the 5 would go outside, and what goes inside the bracket is what you need to multiply by 5 to make these. Okay, so 5 times something makes 5y, take away, 5 times something makes 15. And those are the bits that go inside the brackets. This one here is complicated, but it's still doable. Okay, and what I recommend you do is, first of all, separate the number and the algebra. And if there's more than one letter, look at the letters in turn. So, first of all, look at the 18 and the 27. What's the biggest factor that they share? Put that number outside. Then you've got an A and an A. What do they share? Put that outside. Then you've got a B and a B squared. What do they share? Put that outside. So there's your thing outside. Then you put your brackets. And then this thing outside multiplied by the first bit needs to make 18AB. So whatever you put outside, what do you need to multiply it by to make 18AB? And then plus, because it's plus here, whatever you put outside, what do you need to multiply it by to make 27AB squared? And once again, look at the numbers and then the letters. So you've got a number outside. What number needs to be here to make 27? Have you got an A here? Okay. Have you got a B here? Okay. And work it out so that whatever you put here, the thing outside multiplies with it to make 27AB squared. Okay. Are there any more questions? I don't think so. So that's the end of that. I hope this video was helpful to you. And as ever, if I can help in any other way, then please ask me once we're back in lessons and back at in school. All right. Cheers, everyone. See you later.